So according to the reports, he turned up at Kelsey's place, a 2-storey home in a perfectly nice suburban neighbourhood, and it was a full house. On the top floor, she shared a master bedroom with her 27-year-old boyfriend, John Logan Kennison. Her son's bedroom was also on the second floor, along with her roommate, Diana Pennas, and another roommate, Jeremy Estrich, slept downstairs. So while this lovely doctor was paying for this house for her to live in, was she getting rent off all these different people? So according to the testimony, both of the roommates say that the fighting began on the 2nd of March when Jeremy, one of the roommates, his girlfriend showed up at the house, apparently drunk, and she was trying to chat Burchard up. Now, Kelsey was not happy with his behaviour, and she started becoming quite enraged when the woman and him began to go to the store together. She allegedly screamed, this roommate, Jeremy, accusing his girlfriend, who was also young and blonde, of trying to take Burchard away from her. When they got back to the house from being at the store, Jeremy and his girlfriend quickly left in a taxi. Then later that night, she freaked out again when discovering text messages on Burchard's phone between him and her mother. Apparently, she found pornographic photos on Burchard's phone, and she lost it, threatening once again to get him fired. And then he began freaking out, and he told her to shut up. He shut himself in her son's bedroom upstairs, slamming the door behind him. Now, earlier, one of Turner's friends who was visiting had collected her 4-year-old and taken him from the house. And it all happened so quickly, apparently. She hadn't known Turner for very long, and she was living rent-free in this house. Essentially a part-time nanny for Turner's little boy. She was 30 at the time, a few years older than Kelsey Turner. And she worked nights as a bar attender. When suddenly she was here watching as Turner's boyfriend kicked down the door of Burchard's room and barged in with a baseball bat. And then moments later ran into his room with the baseball bat and created a very large purple bruise on Burchard's temple. Now, Penna apparently took the bat from Kennison, who then went downstairs with Turner. So Penna got Burchard a glass of water, and Burchard needed to go to the hospital. So he walked downstairs to the garage, climbed in the back seat of Turner's car and waited for Penna, for someone to drive him there. He didn't want to get Turner in trouble. If anything, he just didn't want to ask anyone to take him to the hospital. He didn't want to tell anyone what had happened. And as apparently Turner and Kennison, her boyfriend, remained inside the house. And Burchard became convinced that she would probably kill him. And when she finally came out of the garage, she ordered Penna to start cleaning upstairs, where the dirty clothes were everywhere and the blood from the fight had spilled onto the bed. So she offered to take Burchard to the hospital in a little bit after everything was straightened up, apparently. But Burchard refused to go back inside the house. He was obviously worried for his life. He didn't want to go back in where Turner's boyfriend was with the baseball bat. And that's when Penna heard Turner yelling at her boyfriend to knock Thomas out. By the time Penna got downstairs to try and stop whatever was happening, she said it was already too late. From the blood in the garage, there was Kennison, her boyfriend, holding a gun covered in blood, and Penna panicked and began crying. I didn't know what else to do, she said, so I started cleaning. Penna stayed at her boyfriend's house that night, along with Turner and Turner's son, and the next day she returned to the house to clean up some more, then checked into a motel. She didn't want to be there. The boyfriend joined them. For the next few nights, they bounced between friends' houses and another motel. Then a friend of Turner's picked them up and drove them to California. So there were stains found on the mattress, both on the bed frames and the north wall, a small table and on the direct TV receiver. They were all swabbed and collected as evidence, along with some cleaning supplies from the same room. A red bottle of pet stain remover was also recovered from the landing area outside the bedroom. Several items bearing Kennison's name were also photographed in Turner's bedroom. Following the search warrant at the address, the crime scene personnel responded to the lost property room at the All Suites Hotel and Casino, which is where they stayed after the murder. They found bags along with 5 pieces of paper bearing Burchard's handwriting, Turner's Nevada driving license, and several prescription bottles bearing Penna's name. The paperwork was shown and they positively identified these pages from Burchard's handwriting removed from his planner, wherein he kept meticulous financial notes and password information because of his memory. Gradually, after so many days, and they'd worked out whose car it was and what had happened, they were all arrested, weeks after fleeing to Vegas. So Turner was captured by a fugitive task force in Stockton, in California, in mid-April. And Penna, her friend, her roommate, handed herself in to Las Vegas police with a lawyer. And she told detectives everything she knew. And then days later, Turner's boyfriend was arrested, and he later called Penna a snitch. While the others pleaded not guilty to the murder charges, including a Category A felony of murder with use of a deadly weapon against a victim over 60 years of age, Penna pleaded guilty to a lesser charge of accessory to murder. So in early June, they all sat in the same courtroom in Vegas with a judge for the procedural hearings with other inmates. Now, Kelsey Turner seemed to pout her lips while she waited, and then she was like pulling her hair to one side, and she was wearing prison orange scrubs which were hiding her belly. She was pregnant. She had revealed this after her arrest in Stockton. She's under extreme pressure right now, her lawyer had said, due in part to the fact that she's pregnant, very near to the end of her term, and she's locked up in a place that's extremely unpleasant for her. So apparently her exact due date was not given, but she did later give birth to a daughter. Her boyfriend was expressionless, really. He was just staring around the courtroom very casually in the earlier hearing and, flashing a note reading, "Love you, little mama," while talking to a judge. So Penna, she tried to hide her face from the cameras. She didn't want to be seen. But soon after Kelsey's arrest, the case was picked up by international media, and the story was just of a beautiful woman with a dark side, killing a doctor, described by many as beloved, almost saint-like. According to notes, Burchard had paid for Turner's expenses, amounting to $300,000. Later, she tells me that was a conservative estimate. She'd stopped calculating. And while Smith declined to provide Turner's full version of events, he insisted it was impossible for her to have killed Burchard. She was 5 foot 4, 120 pounds, and she could not have lifted his body into the trunk of the car, let alone beaten him to death. So according to prosecutors, they've decided that they won't be seeking the death penalty for the former Maxim Playboy model. So Kelsey, Nicole Turner and John Logan Kennison did plead not guilty in the March death of 71-year-old Dr Burchard. Police did say that Burchard did have an intimate relationship with Turner and rented the Las Vegas house where Turner and Kennison and the roommate lived. Penner pleaded guilty to accessory to murder and implicated Turner and Kennison in Burchard's death. Will be the main witness in this case. It was due to go to trial in summer 2020, but due to things that have been going on like COVID, it has been put forward to next year. Well, that was the end of that case for today. I'll give you updates when we get some more updates, but for now, they are locked away and they're getting everything they deserve, because this poor doctor, he just had such a lovely life and he was just so lovely. He was so giving and so happy. He had a lovely girlfriend who obviously stood by him throughout a lot, and he was starting to become ill with dementia. It was a hard time in his life as well as his girlfriend's life, and it was going to be a long, difficult road with dementia. All of his family and friends obviously will be missing him very, very much. Well, that's the end of this case today. Thank you for listening, guys. I'll be back with some new content soon. Stay safe. Bye.